Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Scoville, let me first return to a matter that was raised earlier, and then I want to follow up on another matter with Mr. Montoya. But insinuations were made earlier regarding the Tiger program, and I want to just give you a chance to respond here. I want to confirm, I suppose, that you've never found evidence of improper procedures or any kind of partisan screening of applications in the Tiger program?
Mr. Price, we haven't looked for partisan activities regarding screening. I can tell you a major finding from our 2012 report was at the tail end of Tiger projects. What were the performance measures that the department was able to identify and require of grantees, and how would those be aggregated or rolled up into an overall evaluation of the success of the Tiger program? That's a recommendation that's still outstanding for us. Mm-hmm. We haven't been able to find evidence that the department has succeeded on that one yet.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever found improper or unusual intervention in the decision process by either Secretary LaHood or Secretary Fox?
We have not conducted a study under Secretary Fox. Our first 2012 report was with then Secretary LaHood. Mm-hmm. At that time, we recommended process improvements, but we found no evidence, as you put it earlier, of partisan involvement or motivation.
Is there any reason that the Secretary, by virtue of Charlotte, North Carolina being his hometown, should rule out the possibility of any kind of Tiger grant to that formal law or procedure that would suggest that that Charlotte should be ruled out by virtue of the Secretary's hometown?
I'm not aware of law or procedure that might lead the Secretary to recuse himself or to sit out a decision on a Charlotte application, for instance. I can say, however, that in the exercise of good judgment and prudence, might a deciding official be concerned with perceptions? Of course. Such decisions and actions had been considered in the past, then he might proceed. Right. I do have to say, again, Mr. Price, we haven't looked at the Tiger Grant program specifically since 2012.
And so you have no information about recusal or anything else with respect to the Charlotte decision?
I don't.
All right. Mr. Montoya, you had limited time to answer my question about the retirement numbers at HUD and the difficulties in recruiting new employees, particularly at higher levels for these jobs. It seems to me, just on the face of it, that the problem is rather different from what we've heard described at DOT, where you can identify particular categories of employees who where the numbers are low, alarmingly low, and the reasons for that, and the mitigating training programs and other things that might be undertaken. With HUD, it seems to be a more generalized problem. First of all, is that true? And how would you assess that? Are we talking here about public service somehow being degraded, devalued, less attractive than it's been for the kind of people who we need to attract than other comparable jobs? Are there pay issues here that help account for this? I want to give you a chance to explain what you described, in other words.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the follow-up question, Mr. Price. I think it starts with a number of things. One, I think the human capital OCHICO section of the department has struggled for many years to sort of get this right, how best to hire, how quick to hire. I don't believe it's an issue of people not wanting to come to government service. I personally think that HUD is a noble mission. When you think of the fact that their mission is to help care and tend for those who are less fortunate than us, I think it's a noble mission. I don't believe it's that. I think it's just a lack of any urgency, quite frankly, in particular areas. I think in others, it is a financial consideration, like GNMA, as I spoke to earlier. You know, I want to clarify something I said earlier when I said the CIO office, the Chief Information Office, is lacking a lot of highly skilled sets. The correction I want to make is it was the chief financial officer's office who is lacking 11 key positions. So they all seem to be lacking quite a few numbers of key positions, which I don't think is a pay issue because it's, you know, everyone else is sort of fighting for the same positions. I think it's just a lack of any urgency to get these positions filled.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Mr. Jolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the comments from my colleague from North Carolina, certainly my friend Henry. And look, I realize it's not a comfortable conversation, but for the record, you have not looked into that decision. And this is not whether or not it was affiliated by party. This was whether or not a secretary should have recused himself from the largest single state Tiger Grant Award. His words, his quote. The president and I are giving this region $25 million. So clearly the secretary prioritized the grant to Charlotte in a way that raises questions of the oversight authority of this body and frankly this subcommittee. The Charlotte Observer, the day that he made the announcement, said, despite the $25 million, the project remains in limbo. We are still uncertain where the matching money will come from. We are still uncertain what the amount is. Now, the Tiger Grant applications I've seen, one of the predicates is ensuring that there's a local sponsor that has the funds necessary to match the federal award. But even that was uncertain. So the question I ask is not party related. And I appreciate you clarifying that past secretaries have done that. I appreciate that. It is that this was the largest single state award to the mayor's home city, where the reports were that they were unsure where the matching money was going to come from, and the project itself, the week it was announced, was termed to be in limbo. It is appropriate for this subcommittee to ask those questions. It is an uncomfortable conversation, but to the extent that your office continues or is contemplating future study into the Tiger Grant Award process, I think it is relevant, certainly in the opinion of this member, and certainly given that the decision to award had not been granted in the past to Charlotte, but was granted in what is essentially the Secretary's last year in this administration on his way out the door. So I appreciate and respectfully the difference of how we see this issue, but I do think we have a responsibility on this subcommittee to ask the hard questions. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.